Tama must be warned again, even if it's like this. It won't be good. I didn't feel good when I was at the demonic sect's courtyard. At that time, their target was the sovereign, not just the guards. If they knew he had left the demon sect, they would approach him. So perhaps it's better if he keeps doing this. King Ko has already planned it in his mind. At this moment, the cries of pain from the guards echoed. Indeed, he must have endured a lot of humiliation, his body being controlled in a gruesome way. Not only that, but he was also tortured brutally. Who allows you to doze off like that? His father's stern voice echoed along with intermittent interrogations. Until will you answer all my questions? If you can't, don't expect to survive outside. The courts outside will also be pleased to have your mouth sealed. Still, you're just an ordinary guard. Don't waste my time. I'll ask one last time. Did the sect leader pass on his martial arts to him? Jaehan still didn't speak but just groaned, denying approaching death, yet still stubbornly continued torturing him. Another subordinate rushed into the dungeon to report that Thien Pham had left the demon sect. Upon hearing this, I became surprised. Indeed, it was the right timing. So its luck has run out, but where is it now? The subordinate whispered, and upon hearing, the madam showed a satisfied expression. Perhaps his movements have been completely monitored. The guards were helpless, only begging for everything to be well for that calm too. The next morning, at a small inn outside the demon sect, the protagonist and two subordinates were here, following King Ko's plan to lure them out. The rest will observe the movements around. It's really cunning. But whether they're approaching or not, Thien Pham remains silent, eavesdropping. He had already heard the conversation of the demon sect. Indeed, he had been following them. Since leaving the demon sect, someone outside had warned the others not to use their abilities to avoid unjust deaths. They weren't ordinary. This threat was different from when they were in the demon sect because their own people were kidnapped and in danger, so they were enraged. Nano, find where the transmission is coming from. I've heard it. Hearing different sound wave frequencies, he adjusted to the one his master's hearing used. The first matter concerning the toxic sect. Go to their sect's courtyard at noon. When you arrive, you must come empty-handed. Bringing a sword on your hip will cost you a hand. Since the door, this was evident, as you must approach alone within a radius of 300 steps. If any shadow appears, their life is forfeited. After hearing this, Thien Pham identified the position of that sneaky person. Although he didn't know their face, he was certain they were at the entrance. What should he do before they disappear from his senses? He thought and then performed a few strange actions, and those around showed their disapproval. Not only those nearby, but most of the diners here were suspicious. Suddenly, several of them exclaimed, daring to claim themselves as our sovereign subjects. In an instant, the protagonist eliminates those inside. The one transmitting was panicked and about to flee, but perhaps he wasn't fast enough anymore. Thien Pham grabbed him by the throat to control him. Whose sect are you from? The spy, fearing, stammered. It seems he wasn't lying as he looked like a commoner. In that case, we won't kill you. Instead, you'll stay here for 2 days. After speaking, he let some bystanders strike them a few times. Then he continued to lock them in his warehouse. He thought they had to wait until everyone gathered to find clues. While the two were returning, the first to arrive was King Ko. He had been spying on the demon sect. Many people were going in and out, but nothing suspicious happened inside. When asked about the Straw Hat team, the first sword also didn't know. It's probably caused by the toxic and sword sects. We can only determine which section it is when Bok Kai and Tama return. At this point, it's been half an hour, and those two comrades still haven't returned. King Ko understood that and had a bad feeling about it. Thien Pham himself also had those thoughts. What happened to them? At the same time, the wicked chief lady of the sect was leisurely sitting, taking a few sips of tea while seizing the opportunity to recite poetry. As her subordinates returned, following they were two bodies lying unconscious, indeed Bok Kai and Tabatrak. As the lady said, we discovered someone lurking near the Sword Devil sect's courtyard. Although so, this person is quite powerful. Another subordinated speculated that at the very least, that person must have reached the peak of initial mastery. Without our warriors' help, I wouldn't be able to deal with it. Whatever happened has already happened. I'm sure that guy will be confused, not knowing which faction has captured his bodyguards. They must be worried because they've been serving the wicked lady for 20 years. so they understand her cruelty. As soon as Lady Seven Failures appeared, she immediately set up a trap. If she hadn't become the wife of the sect master, she might have become the sect leader of the ghost sect by now. By the way, those guys belong to which faction? This young man is Bok Kai, the son of the Pure Virtue sect's leader, a superior faction. That wretch must have put in a lot of effort at the Devil Sect's headquarters to recruit such skilled disciples. As for Tama's whereabouts, his subordinates probably don't know what to do either. Tan, the son of the ninth elder, was discovered, and even Tuma seemed surprised. You are very lucky to have talented people around you. It's too dangerous otherwise. The wicked lady is seizing the opportunity while the sect master is absent to eliminate Tan Fam. That night, at the Western Palace of the Heavenly Devil Sect, a few guards were already on the roof, checking the surroundings. Alone, the protagonist enters the opponent's hideout. He seemed confident but knew someone was watching. Just a small movement and he would be spotted. Quickly, the men on the roof identified the prey and hid to set up the heavenly trap. Tian Pham passed through the large gate of the Devil Sect's headquarters, and before him sat the wicked lady. She laughed loudly at the sight of her opponent vying for the position of deputy sect master with her son. They had prepared everything, as it seemed there were about 200 people here. If it were a normal situation, they wouldn't have prepared so carefully. Tian Pham thought it was reasonable, as there was a strong aura throughout the sect, ready to obey orders to poison him. In the end, they finally meet. "Come here quickly," she said. "After so many years, I finally see you again." Tian Pham also remembers the time when his mother was dying. She had brought many people to threaten and promise the flower lady to save the life of her son, Seventh Failure, who would not learn martial arts until he was old enough and would enter the Devil Sect. The boy had grown up so impressively, resembling your mother. Indeed, you and that filthy woman had caused me a lot of trouble. Just one trap, and even you, a beggar, have been deceived. Truly not worthy of my attention. Let's ignore those insults. I'm only interested in the whereabouts of Jiang Jahan. Do you think I will easily give up my hostage? How arrogant. Your mocking expression has made my blood boil. I don't like that look. Or should I destroy your sect's formation first? The subordinate understood and moved to suppress him while he was distracted. If you want to live, stay still and let me do my thing. But Tian Pham countered by asking him if he was the one who threatened him through the transmission at the end, to which he got a nervous response. Before he could destroy his power, he was stopped and his arm twisted, causing him to cry out. The wicked lady threatens him again. If Tian Pham acted recklessly, she would order Jiang's bodyguards to kill him. It seemed he had already prepared, so there was nothing to fear. He casually tossed a small box to her and said not to ask too many questions. Just open it and see for yourself. Although curious, she remained cautious, examined the box carefully before opening it. Inside was an unidentified sphere, possibly related to the sect master's first lady. Seeing her confused expression, he explained that she shouldn't rush. "Let me ask you, who is the owner of the eye in the wooden box?" She began to rethink. "Could be, my son. How is that possible? I think you've put in a lot of effort, but you've underestimated me. If you break into the Devil Sect, the Ho-Min doctrine cannot be ignored. Don't think I'll be fooled by this alone." Despite his efforts, he couldn't hide the surprise on his face when he suddenly heard the guards had disappeared. Why did he suddenly say that? However, the kidnappers were trying to lure him into a trap. When he came to rescue, he didn't know what they were planning. I don't bother to respond. Tian Pham cast a spell. Holding his hands up, he continued to wonder aloud, but only received terrifying silence. Initially, I intended to go and rescue Jiang's bodyguards, but I changed my mind when I truly found out who the mastermind behind this was. Do you know who the offender is? It's when your despicable gang, the Ghost Sect, heard this. They became frightened. Keep calm. If you touch me, what will happen to that Jiang Jahan? Tin added a few more words, then quickly slashed the guy's hands, blood spraying all over his face before he could feel anything. Then came a scream from outside the cave. Although it was painful, the old woman didn't forget to curse the protagonist. However, eager as he was, didn't say anything due to the deep wound. Indeed, this situation wasn't good. You won't die just because you lost your hands. Finally, just to scare him, I temporarily requested a ceasefire as a gift from my grandmother. It's quite strange to turn around and still have a more sparkling piece. Would you like to see it? The symbolic card represents the position of the young master of the Hyunma sect, now revealed. Now the Vofu, matriarch, began to believe that the eye belonged to her despicable son. He ignored all principles and dared to cause this incident. His intentions were clear now, to release the Jane guards and his ruthless subordinates. It was so easy to follow through. If I release that person, you also need something worthy, of course. There's always something equivalent for exchange. The Vofu ordered her subordinates to bring all of the Thing Fam people up. Now, show me your willingness. My son is here, and I'll send someone of mine there. My subordinates are holding Theme Bean and Muk Tin Don in captivity in the demon's den. After hearing this, the old woman was delighted. She didn't expect Theme Fam to be so cooperative. After wiping out all your subordinates, I'll regain the initiative to establish authority. You throw the card. Let's hand it over, and my people will bring them directly here. Holding the senior card in hand, the person reminded the attendant not to release the hostage hastily, but to exchange them at the designated place. It was quite a hassle for you to go through another battle after eliminating them all. After the children return safely, I'll make sure they die a miserable death quickly. The gang entered the demon's den to discuss secret matters, and it was still terrible inside. The person in the demon's den must have been killed long ago. As soon as they arrived at the detention site, the old man reminded his people, "My puck is ready at the mountainside. When we get someone, immediately ambush the subordinates of Theme Fam." Everyone followed the orders, and each person acted accordingly. Now it's time to check inside to see if there's anything suspicious because the cave's door was already open. Just as they leaned in, the sound of unsheathing swords resounded. "Who are you? How dare you brazenly intrude into the demon's den? It was fearless to break into the demon's den like that. Quickly lower your weapons and surrender." The mountain lord realized he was trapped, so he quickly fled to report to the owner. However, after 3 steps, he had to stop. There was a dark figure waiting ahead. The shopkeeper didn't bother to hide anymore. "Are you from this place?" There was nothing more to say. The animation of Lai Ho Min disappeared as soon as the question was asked. He had already dealt with the trust of the Vofu in no time. Meanwhile, she was sweating profusely because she didn't know who to turn to. Everybody was busy, and nobody was coming back. Theme Fam also understood that, so he decided to chat to pass the time. "You intended to kill all of my subordinates to save your son, didn't you? But half the time has passed, and you still haven't achieved anything, right?" After hearing these words, she realized she had been deceived. She was about to order the remaining subordinates to return when there was a loud noise from outside. The guards announced the enemy's invasion, so the shopkeeper quickly rushed into the demon's den. His subordinates were embarrassed, covered in the enemy's blood, and with tears in their eyes. After a few moments, they recognized Lai Ho Min, the guardian. Why did he come here? But upon closer inspection, they noticed his frightened eyes and only managed to utter words of regret for their loved ones. The protagonist finally played his hand to truly intimidate the opponent, which was quite difficult for him. Then the guardian exclaimed, "What is happening? Since when did he become the subordinate of that wild child?" Feeling bitter, the Vofu spoke loudly, reminding that the matter of the guardian should not interfere with the struggle for the position of the sect leader. "You're violating the principles of our sect," she said. But Lady Homin's cynical words did not indicate the end of the struggle for power between the sect leaders, did they? How could she not understand? It seems she still harbors hope. Perhaps she believes that by killing me, there's still a chance for her son to emerge victorious. The failure of the 7th Young Master's scheme has shattered the plans of the martial arts mistress. And now, she's scheming to secure the hostage and return to the Hyunma sect. Meanwhile, the Hyunma sect is calculating, waiting for their elder brother, the first chief, to return. But just as they were about to make their move, a subordinate rushed in to warn the master. Outside, for reasons unknown, a crowd was gathered quickly. Another drama was unfolding, modified, touching the ground. Taking the initiative to inquire, it turned out to be someone from the Hwanyi Pavilion. The elder Thapnat of the Devil Sect had arrived at this hour, apparently confused, as she had not yet recognized anyone. The sect leader of the Phantom Devil Sect's performance had been accomplished as planned, and the elder Thapnat was returned once again. In this situation, what are we to do? The Hwanyi messenger reported that Bok Kai had only been injured, but Jang Hovi was in critical condition, lying at the medicine temple. The current situation was dire, with the threads hanging by a thread, and life could be lost at any moment. As if the situation wasn't dire enough, a terrifying aura emanated from above. Indeed, this information was kept close to the protagonist. Perhaps the one he needs to be angry with is deeply concerned. Even those on the rooftop can feel that our hearts seem to be squeezed by that guy Dan. So everything is now completely out of the control of the martial arts mistress. Does that mean we have been defeated by some wild brat? While lost in thought, the cries of attendants broke out loudly as it seemed the young master had returned. Van Q warned that they were still active, which was indeed a beautiful move. Following her was Hai Bong and Kov Womcat, subduing the sky and the earth. Upon closer inspection, the sky and the earth were no longer calm. Seeing her son, the martial arts mistress lost all her composure, crying out naïve in helplessness. She no longer needed anything else. She just knew she had to apologize to her mother for her incompetence. Hearing these words, one could no longer comprehend anything. Teeth clenched tightly together in fury. That's it then. All that remains is a shred of dignity. The martial arts mistress knelt down to the sky, crying out because the scene was unbearable. Thien Pham's disciple, I admit defeat. You are the only sect leader. Please raise your hand and spare us a way to live. Just as she finished speaking, the sinister woman transmitted a message to her beloved son, demanding his mouth. Remember what we endured today. This grudge will demand both the root and the interest after saving our children. You may kneel down to this wild child 1,000 times, and it won't matter. After sending the message, she continued in a weak, feeble voice, pleading for forgiveness, as she knew what Thien Pham's intentions would be. Then he continued to search for key in his hands, making a few gestures towards those two miserable individuals without a sound of defeat. Here, there was no lost lament, only a terrifying sight of slaughter awaits them. The martial arts mistress of the sky had never seen the sun again. The protagonist went mad, venting his hatred on their bodies. He looked no different from a cruel murderer. Despite being dead, continuously swinging his sword, his emotions were in turmoil because of the revenge of the past. How could they understand the pain of losing a mother since childhood? The martial arts mistress writhed on the ground, screaming in despair. It only increased the anger of those present at the sight of helplessness. At this moment, the sky's martial arts master had fallen after being tortured to the point of horror. His mother, in agony, could only touch her with her hands, unable to speak. Even the most loyal followers of Thien Pham were unable to understand the strange coldness that crept over them. For the first time, they saw their leader act like this. The martial arts mistress choked, unable to say anything. Her mouth kept calling out her son's name subconsciously. She looked like a madwoman, completely losing her mind. Only now did the protagonist inquire about the current emotions of the opponent. That is the pain we endure when losing our mother and loved ones. Now it's her turn to bear it. Several men, including Trung Than, were planning to rush in to seek revenge for the wife, but a powerful force stopped them. Anyone attempting to cross this barrier would face the wrath of Mothu, ruthless and unforgiving. If you're not afraid to die, then come and try, shouted one from afar, even attempting a sneak attack. But with no one to restrain, vengeance would be swift. Why is it like this? She lamented. Where did I go wrong? Why do you treat me like this? Attempting to kill me, why harm my child? Blame, debt, and guilt lie with you. Killing me is justifiable. Why do it in such a way? Indeed, this woman knows no shame, even daring to question me after killing my mother. What audacity! Yet she still begs for mercy, oblivious to the truth. Thien Pham retrieved something from his person and threw it down, a letter for her to read. As she began to comprehend its contents, Thien Truong Thien, of the Diabolic clan, explained his motive. He rewinds time slightly. Back at the Diabolic clan's main hall, where the righteous school's master had come to be a servant delivering news, the Mystic clan had stirred, as per the guard's reports, similar to one of Thien Pham's subordinates. How dare they touch a valuable subordinate of his? Not long ago, the Diabolic clan's power had been waned by eightfold due to raids from the Mystic clan. The Mystic clan aims to eradicate the Diabolic clan, forcing them and the Celestial clan into conflict. One would perish, ensure mutual destruction. Therefore, he ordered his subordinates to handle the matter, for this letter reveals the true offender behind the subordinate's capture and the circumstances of his demise. Facts even the clan's records did not reveal. Having pondered, the vile woman made no more denial. Indeed, it was I who killed that despicable woman. What of it? She challenged. How dare you, scoundrel? He returned. My elder will not let this go. If you touch me, all here will perish. I've had enough. Irritated, Thien Pham lightly slashed her eyes with his sword, enveloping her with darkness. You have no right to see any more, nor do you have the right to speak, he asserted, gently slicing his opponent's tongue. Thereafter, no screams or curses could escape. This was the price of years of misconduct. Stop. Are you not afraid of retribution? She pleaded. Those here are not all our forces, he warned. The first elder, upon learning, won't spare the heir. But I care not for their words. Engaging his internal energy, he pointed behind him, and the warehouse doors burst open, revealing scores, even hundreds, of corpses. Among them lay Thien Truong Thien, the diabolic clan's young master, vanquished in the struggle against the mystic clan. It seemed that they were unaware. Now those remaining from both factions trembled, as Thien Pham's aura intensified. I command you all to finish off the rest, he decreed. With swift obedience, the Dharma protector and the first elder's disciples hastened to slaughter. No one had time to react or scream. The night air resonated with silence, now painted red with blood, the most gruesome carnage, stemming from a power struggle for the sect leadership. Although sinister, it roots out the evil at its core, ensuring none could challenge Thien Pham's authority again. The diabolic clan's compound now lay strewn with corpses, with only a handful of survivors, scared and fleeing. Perhaps their fate mirrored that of their master. All would perish, none spared, a secret Thien Pham wished to keep. His minions gradually eliminated the last remnants, leaving only the cruel woman alive. My soldiers have died in vain. Why do you only end this now? She asked. Finally, as her screams cease, the tale spanning years concludes. You wretched scum! Now that this vile woman had no resistance left, her mouth could only whimper, unable to scream. Nearby, meticulous examinations of the corpses were conducted by the Hofap, ensuring thoroughness as dead bodies lay strewn everywhere. My lord, everything is finished, the head disciple reported. Elder, please order the soldiers to search the diabolic clan's chambers. If they find any poison, neutralize it from the mystic clan's bodies. Thien Pham promised. You truly think deeply, my lord, the elder acknowledged. The body of the cruel woman still writhes weakly, crawling aimlessly. Crawl down to hell and beg forgiveness from my mother until you turn to dust, he scorned. So that's it, you taking care of the two most annoying opponents the next day within the city's inner circle. Rumors of the battle between the mystic and poisonous sects have spread, and all members of both sects have been completely wiped out. Surprisingly, the mastermind behind this is the mystic sect. Within the poisonous sect's compound, there were over 200 mystic sect soldiers' bodies, allegedly poisoned. Rumors circulated about the presence of the celestial realm's former lord there, suggesting involvement with the demonic sects. People speculated endlessly about the recent absence of the sect leaders, and the dissolution of their factions soon followed. It seems that someone within the sects orchestrated the dissemination of information, with the sect leader orchestrating it all. Regardless, we had intended to fabricate information, but his manipulation was truly skillful. As the mystic sect leader returns, I'm truly curious about his next move. Meanwhile, Thien Pham remains vigilant at the Demon's Pass, with his followers doing the same, aware of the Lord's night-long vigil for news of Bok Trom Min's health. After a while, the door opened, revealing an exhausted Thien elder still present. Surprisingly, Physician Jiang and Guardian Ha didn't show up. It turns out that the reason for Ta Hofap's personal visit was to inquire about this matter. Perhaps the Thien elder holds this person in high regard, hence the urgency. Admin then softly updated on Guardian Jahan's condition, stating that she had lost all her teeth, but her life was not in danger. Nearby attendants promptly congratulated the Lord for faithfully tending to the patient all night. Advising him to rest, they urged him to leave as they had to go outside. Everyone mentioned Thien Pham, urging him to rest after staying up all night. The Lord paused, making those behind him wait for orders. Regardless, we have no time for such matters. According to the Thien elder's information, the sect leader is returning soon. We must recruit 2 more members before then, as both the sect leader and the 6 sect heads of the 6 great sects will be absent. Dealing with the martial artists was made easier by their absence. If they return, they will surely try to regain control. We must prepare carefully. It's time to convince the Elder Council about our faction. When he finishes treating Tom Ma's internal injuries, he will join us. We already have the answer about where to go, right? Yes, we will go to the Mystic Sword sect. The invitation of the floral banquet is one of the 12 elders of the sect. She and Hang Tanu of the dark sect are the only 2 female elders. Despite being called a sect, there are only 2 followers, one of whom the sect leader dislikes, the elder guardian of the Fight Demon sect. The other is the sect leader of the Mystic Sword sect. This elder never attends meetings without the sect leader present, and she never leaves the sect to entertain guests. It's unclear why she occasionally contacts the sect leader and the mystic sect leader. These details come from Tahoe Fap. It seems they often meet at the mountain peak, rarely visited by anyone else. We sent Tamnu, but her martial arts were too high to approach the meeting. It was strange, but after the meeting, she stayed in the sect and remained unresponsive. The Lord stopped monitoring her 7 years ago. She lacks influence and achievements among the elders. She only belongs to the lower ranks of the Book of Annals, but her martial arts are exceptional. She's certainly talented, but her peculiar and stubborn personality prevents her from having any followers. Ho Men suggested finding someone else for the Lord's advisor, but he insisted on her. Now that we've arrived at the Mystic Sword sect, the 4 of us approached the main gate of the floral banquet hall. Boldly, we knocked on the door. After a while, someone came to greet us. "Welcome, gentlemen. What brings you here?" This person was the 12th elder of the sect. "Please convey to the chief elder that someone has come to see the steward," I said. He seemed surprised since the steward appeared to be only 20 years old, yet held such a position. Tian Pham had to show his jade tablet to confirm his identity. After seeing it, the elder immediately rushed inside to report. An hour passed without any movement. Eventually, the steward came out, looking apologetic. "Is it the sect leader who sent you here?" our sect leader asked. "No, our sect leader said she wouldn't meet anyone who wasn't sent by the chief elder," replied the sect steward. Indeed, this person has an extremely eccentric personality, so the protagonist is pondering how to approach her. Should he try to appeal to her martial nature? After considering, he also gathers his luck to exude a great aura, aiming to draw attention from the subordinates around. However, none of them understand his intentions. Everyone speaks up, asking why he is acting this way. Despite their inquiries, there is no response from her. She truly lives up to Ho Fap's description. Annoyed, he conveys his message to her one last time. Hopefully, this will prompt her to reconsider. With a few cryptic words, she decided to walk the same path as the Chuan Ma sect and Sword Ma sect. How hopeful he is that the 12 elders will wait. Just a moment, and we'll announce it right away. Why is the Lord here to collect the gems? Why ask such a question? Curious if she is an outsider or will become our enemy, we don't know. Perhaps His Excellency no longer needs the gems. If that person is not an enemy, then it's good to know. While talking, an intense internal energy emanates from within. Clearly, this is the only way to quickly change the 12 elders' minds. The steward rushes out to announce the Lord's request to bring him inside. Thus, the protagonist and his subordinates follow the order and enter. Bird's nest flowers stand above, waiting in a strange manner. She seems unwelcoming. Nat Kiem and Tiger Troop don't understand why the head elder draws his sword. The person calmly descends to talk. The 12 elders request to meet the protagonist. Despite his boldness, he shouldn't expect polite treatment. We only receive the sect leader here, not anyone she ignores. He is as fiery as ever, not only determined to respond but also cursing and causing chaos. Then, he unsheathes his sword with clear intentions. "How dare you? Do you think our sect's sword is the same as those betrayers? Today, I'll make your boy understand." He rushes forward quickly, causing Van Q to panic, reminding the Lord to be cautious. Not only that, but the movement and swordsmanship are unfamiliar. This surprises Thien Pham, who quickly draws his sword to counter. Both clash instantly. Yen Mako is also curious about the opponent's swordsmanship, realizing something as they fight. She can't believe this. How could this happen? She stops a few more strikes, then both step back, no longer fighting. "What are you?" Why did you destroy my sword technique? The Lord should be the one asking that question. Why did you learn this sword technique? Yet Manhwa doesn't understand why the 12 elders knows the same sword technique she does. Then, she admits it's the Tan Tan Demon Sword, a legendary sword technique of the Demon Sword Sect. This is the first time she's heard of someone outside the sect learning it. The subordinates are astonished to hear the Lord speak of the mythical sword of the celestial demon sect. The protagonist reads the technique correctly. The Tan Tan Ma sword, written in the ancient script, is the second only to the celestial demon swordsmanship. Vuong Kit doesn't understand, but he knows this technique has been lost for 500 years. Just by destroying one sword, how did he do it? Yin Mak-ho speaks up again, asking if he's the heir of an unknown person. Hearing this, Thien Pham is also confused. He doesn't understand what's going on and who the mysterious person is. How did he know the Tan Tan Ma sword? If he didn't know, he couldn't have executed the technique to destroy hers. Thien Pham is also puzzled, so he keeps asking why the head elder learned this technique and why she, who is not a member of the sword sect, understands it. That's right, it's the Tan Tan Demon Sword, the sword technique of the sword demon sect. But you're not a member of the sword sect. Listening to those words, Yin Mak-ho grits her teeth angrily. Damn you! You're really tired of living. I'll use my strength to make you spill it all. The male protagonist understands that the opponent can't do anything, relying too much on herself. She's too confident. The sword and Nuvu's nose are large and majestic, and the energy is aimed straight at him. As she approaches, her body moves elsewhere, and the sword swings fiercely towards Thien Pham. Seeing the movement, he also successfully responded, demonstrating his talent to impress Yin Mak-ho. However, the other person doesn't seem to be at a disadvantage. Clearly, they're of the same caliber, but she has changed and overcome the weaknesses in the textbook. To see if he can withstand it any longer, if he's too stiff, he'll have to lower some more internal energy to enjoy. The main character decided to demonstrate his strength by engaging in a fierce duel with two opponents, seemingly without any intention, but endured nonetheless. Indeed, this despicable fellow seemed to have mastered the Tan Tan Devil Sword technique and the Yamu Flower retreat maneuver. I have reserved this move for dealing with such despicable rascals. As the initiation technique unfolded before his eyes, Thien Pham vaguely recognized it. A strike from Yamu Flower rushed towards him with determined intent, despite his blindness. However, the mesmerizing movements of the Chief Elder's technique constantly shifted, making it necessary for him to widen his gaze a bit. Nat Kiem felt a resemblance to the Seven Devil Sword technique. Why did this person know so many sword techniques? Not only had he mastered the Tan Tan Devil Sword, but he also added this one. Although it resembled his own sword technique, the sequence and execution were entirely different. Ultimately, what was this technique? As blows rained down, Yamu Flower seemed to have countless elusive thoughts. She continued to attack chaotically as if her body was being drawn in by the protagonist's divine power. He quickly closed in and struck. Although the sword technique didn't pose a lethal threat, it dispersed the energy in her hands. With his internal energy and agility, he continued to overwhelm his dizzy opponent. Now was the time for the final blow, as per theory. Yamu Flower widened her eyes in fear, and then, nothing happened. The protagonist's internal energy and the Chief Elder's body collapsed to the ground. What next? She wrinkled her face in frustration, realizing there was nothing left to fight against. He hadn't misjudged that rascal. He must have used that anonymous divine sword technique. Now, could she teach him that sword technique? No, if she wanted retribution for her failure, he would willingly let her strike his other hand. Thien Pham didn't know how to handle this stubbornness, so he changed the subject. He wanted to confirm if she had any connection to the Demon Sword Sect or the Dark Demon Sect. She seemed uncomfortable at the mention of these sects, the reason being, they couldn't coexist. Could she be a descendant of the lost clan of your sect? Were you discussed at the elders' meeting as the seventh disciple of the sect? If it's fate, then it could be called that with these two sects. But he only felt it as an ill-fated connection. 500 years ago, the Demon Sword had 3 disciples. He always emphasized absolute loyalty to the sect. Disciples of the Sword Sect had to be talented, and only one among them would emerge victorious. The others would become the current guardian of the sect, but they, the young and ambitious, became greedy, They relied on the smaller sects for support and engaged in illicit affairs with the sect's master. The demon sword was disappointed and angry, thinking that power had made the disciples greedy. Therefore, he ruthlessly expelled them all. Despite the downfall of many sects, the demon sword was not forgotten. Eventually, the legend of the demon sword sect disappeared from the world. Unable to nurture his disciples, the sword sect's lineage was severed. The founder, Yan Hong II, proclaimed himself as the successor and established the second sword sect, but wasn't recognized at the elders' meeting. However, the meeting recognized the demon sword sect established by Qin Thien and the dark demon sect established by Wu Chao. The founder took offense and was imprisoned. 10 years later, when those sects had grown powerful, the demon sect couldn't compete. Therefore, the Dain Kiem sect was founded to prolong the lineage of the sword and restore its original martial art. Tan Devil's Sword, as Thin Pham felt, had enough time to recover over the past 500 years. It was inexplicable how Yamu Flower knew about the 24 Devil's Sword, created from the destruction of the sword technique after the competition with the Supreme Dewa's sword. She added that the third purpose of the Dain Kiem sect was to remain loyal to the sect's master and reclaim the identity of the sect from the two corrupt sects, the Dark Demon and the Demon Sword sects. He thought that the disciples of the demon sect were only excessively greedy, but among them, some genuinely sought to understand the true essence of the sword sect, and their descendants then began to praise this sect. The Dain Kiem sect was indeed the true successor of the sword sect. He said the sentence that all generations of Dain Kiem sect successors wanted to hear. If my father or master were to hear these words, they would surely be deeply touched. May I ask the chief elder of our sect, also the true successor of the sword sect, a favor? May I join your faction to become a candidate for the position of deputy sect leader? I ask you, sir, that the dominance of the 6 great sects over our sect, causing havoc within our faction, will never happen again. Can you really make a difference? If it were that easy, our ancestors wouldn't have failed. The words of the sect leader are not mere rhetoric. He himself drove the Dark Demon sect to destruction. There are no members of the Dark Demon sect left in our faction, nor are there many survivors from the Dark Demon sect. What you are saying is true. Since you have heard, I won't beat around the bush anymore. If Elder Yan is willing to submit and pledge loyalty to me, then I will officially assist whoever can continue the legacy of our sword sect. I still don't understand your intentions. As the legitimate successor of the sword sect, I will impart the sword technique of the sword sect for you to listen to. Yamu Flower couldn't believe what she was hearing. Do you know what you're saying? It's difficult to explain. Do you know why the demon sect was established, right? It was established to leave behind the sword sect's inheritance. Only those who passed the 6 great trials could obtain the lifelong martial arts. This was the oath of the sword sect. If you don't celebrate, it's not reliable. So Thien Pham intended to let Elder Yan inspect a few moves. He stepped back further, and his internal energy took on the form of the first technique of the Tan Devil Sword, creating a mesmerizing illusion. There was no mistake in leaving behind such a powerful technique that it affected anyone nearby. The chief elder recognized it as the Tan Devil Sword. She observed with broadened eyes to further comprehend the sword technique, which had become even more ethereal. Not only that, there were many refinements in Thien Pham's movements, so natural and uninterrupted. It seemed as though the person performing was the sword sect's disciple from years past. This is the Tan Devil Sword, the second technique. Have you recognized it yet? It's stronger than the techniques we used in the competition. Indeed, the more they fought, the more indescribable Yamu Flower's emotions became. Is this the 12th technique or what? This is the key to unlocking my stagnant martial arts. Just as she finished thinking, Yamu Flower exhibits unusual behavior. Her body suddenly sat down in a moderate posture. Even with all my efforts, I couldn't understand it until now. I now understand the true purpose of the sword sect from years past. This person is gradually entering the process of advancing in cultivation. The essence of heaven and earth's quintessence emanated greatly. After this process ends, the chief elder will reach the stage of transformation. Suddenly, a poisonous dart flew from somewhere towards Yamu Flower. She couldn't defend herself and hastily flew out to intercept it. Upon closer inspection, she learned that there was a deadly toxin in the dart. The mastermind must be trying to escape. So he rushed out to suppress the culprit. Since he was discovered, he planned to flee, but he wasn't very fast, so he was quickly captured. You won't escape. Don't resist. It's futile. Another person nearby was also caught alive. Nat Kim couldn't understand why there were so many. Then he looked down at the captive and was startled. He had bitten the poison in his mouth to commit suicide in order to preserve information. He immediately lost consciousness and lost his life. Your teeth contain poison. Thien Pham used his divine power to prevent the remaining person from trying to bite, but no matter how hard he tried, he couldn't make the broken tooth bite harder. If you think you're a spy, you won't easily give it even with broken fingers, right? The shabby butler couldn't resist anything, just helpless resistance. But how could he endure such excruciating pain that numbed to the core? His subordinates were still focused on protecting the chief elder. They looked over and were chilled to the bone. Yamu Flower's cultivation advancement process was almost complete. Her body began to undergo noticeable changes. The old bones and skin were gradually shed to make way for the new. The energy of the quintessential cultivation continued to emanate greatly. Those around were no longer paying attention to anything but were astonished. The chief elder had undergone a perfect transformation, from cultivation to physical changes. Then she said nothing and walked calmly forward, where the protagonist stood. The next moment, she respectfully performed a ceremonial gesture in front of him. The leader of the demon sect, Duin Kim sect, pledged allegiance to the celestial prince as the top swordsman, and marveled at the beauty of the new chief elder's reconstruction. How adorable! Finally, I have acquired the second person into my hands. As the description of the secret technique stated, now Yen Mukho is the highest-ranking deputy I have, so she will be a powerful ally. However, when the chief elder invited everyone inside for tea and learned about the attempted assassination earlier, she became angry for having spent 10 years nurturing Tan Pham. Tan Pham also wanted to learn about Yen Mukho's relationship with the two rival sects. This must be explained from 8 years ago, on a night when I was diligently cultivating in the courtyard. Suddenly, a mysterious figure appeared, covering his face to reveal only his mysterious eyes. Although I didn't know why, since he had come, I had to receive him politely. However, unexpectedly, within a moment, I was defeated by that person. He managed to restore most of the Tan Devil Sword. If you want to try the first vein technique of the Mach Sword Sect, come to the southwest of the 10,000 mountain range in 3 days. With that, the person disappeared suddenly because he changed his voice, so I had no idea who he was. Although suspicious, the chief elder still arrived at the appointed place, as announced. When she arrived at the Wuhuian Peak, there was a completely unexpected event that she didn't anticipate. Here, the demon sect leader and the mystery sect leader were planning to argue with each other, but the mysterious figure appeared. The person from the sword sect spoke up, asking why they had arranged to meet in the quiet of the night. Do you see? No one said anything. Vu Tran Guyan wanted to know the reason, but the stranger replied that it was for convenience. Today, I will transmit the Tan Devil Sword technique to you because the three of you are the successors of the sword from that year. After hearing that, all three elders remained silent. Then the unknown person demonstrated many techniques from the Tan Devil Sword. The elders didn't argue but silently observed. Even Yamu Flower couldn't determine where the person had learned these techniques. Finally, when the mysterious technique was revealed, everyone was surprised. That sword technique was the 12th demon sword, the ultimate sword technique passed down by the demon sect. Today, I will pass it on to you. After 3 years of perfecting it, I will transmit the rest of the 12 demon sword techniques to you. So, the three diligently practiced and succeeded perfectly after 3 years. When they met again, they were all on equal footing. Therefore, the unknown person gave them an additional 2-year deadline. If anyone is the strongest, he will pass on the secret technique. Thien Pham only now began to understand everything. The competition between the three was extremely fierce. Even though the other two were the strongest in the faction, they couldn't surpass Yen Mukho. The unknown person decided to change the evaluation method to see who was worthy of inheriting the sword's true legacy. Surely, you all remember the first technique in the 12 Demons Sword. If you remember, that's good. There's no need to repeat it. In the next 3 years, if anyone can execute that technique perfectly, I will pass on all the secrets to the main realm without any concealment. Since there is no route for external cultivation, failure is not an option. Vodand concludes that it's still okay if nothing happens. He was about to ask more questions when the person said nothing, leaving everyone stunned in contemplation of the magnificent technique, as it was too powerful. Vaudin also lost his voice in amazement. Those two villains finally realized something mysterious. The mysterious person reiterated the 3-year deadline, and with that, the story of Yamu Flower's past few years came to an end. The assessment period is approaching, and the chief elder intends to announce it first to prevent the two sect leaders from obtaining the secret legacy of the demon sect. As for Nam Chen, he really to know who Vaudin is, but perhaps technique he has also learned the secret wants from the storage vault in the demon sect. To achieve this, he must pass the assessment. The 6th one that no one has passed for 70 years, plus the sword technique that can counter the 24 devil swords, can only be the heavenly sword technique. The Grand Master surely remembers when Vaudin demonstrated that sword technique 3 years ago. If that's the case, I would like to ask if you could spare some time to accompany me to the observation platform. After listening to Yen's explanation, Yen Mukho was quite surprised, but ultimately she also had to follow Theme Fam's plan. In order to break through it, there was only one way: to use the Heaven Demon Sword technique in its first form. This technique indeed bore some resemblance to the technique executed by the anonymous individual, which piqued the curiosity of the old captain. He immediately asked why Theme Fam could know it. Not only that, but he also displayed it more seamlessly than the others. Upon hearing this, he understood that Theme Fam had learned the Heaven Demon Sword technique back then. Before creating the sword-breaking technique, he had already imprinted all the traces of the silver-streamed sword on the crystal jade stone in a secret manual placed within the sect leader's hall. It turned out that the true identity of the anonymous individual was the sect leader, but that was not the only reason. Only those who passed the 6th trial could do it. The current sect leader was only 50 years old, so it was impossible for him to achieve it. Additionally, the anonymous individual had no predetermined route for cultivating, making it difficult to execute the technique. Perhaps I should seize the opportunity to meet him directly once to resolve most of my doubts. With most of the concerns resolved, he left the exclusive area. Yen Mukho also had a few words to say to her subordinates, but they remained silent as they did not know what it was. From this moment on, we will assist Thee Kong too. The old captain will personally do so. I have my own purpose, and I know his abilities, but we cannot foresee what we will face when confronting the 6 great sects. Van Q was still confused and unsure of herself. When she heard that, she finally spoke up. The old captain agreed to assist the Lord, which would greatly benefit him. If he leaves the mansion, it will make the sword sect and others vigilant. However, we cannot calculate that yet. But Lord Vuong laughed heartily, dispelling the tense atmosphere. There's no need to worry about that. Thus, Nat Kiem came up with a plan to help the Lord. Later, he returned to the demon summoning section. The summoning disciples happily greeted him and inquired about the completion of the important task. However, he also noticed a stranger accompanying the protagonist. Who could this young lady be? With sharp eyes, Yen Mukho had to speak up as she was being scrutinized too much. It turns out the person was still disguised as a girl. Why were you looking at me so much? Feeling called out, the sect leader Phi Hong Kui teased. His mannerisms and responses seemed familiar. Then, he vaguely recognized. Are you Captain Yen Mukho? So, she was the famous K Lao Hong Dong. So jealous. Tell me your secret to be so. Theme Pham then spoke up to ask the sect leader to make a mask for Yen Mukho to conceal her identity. It seemed like he wanted the old captain to accompany him. I don't know who came up with this idea, but it seems clever. The demon summoner agreed to the proposal and immediately started making the mask while Theme Pham decided to rest for a day after the busy time since leaving the devil sect. Vuong laughed heartily and swaggered off. Then he went to visit his parents. Van Q decided to visit her younger brother, who was alone at the Ma Long Truong sect. Time passed until the day of the festival. Her brother seemed to be recovering well, but Bok Kai was still in critical condition, confined to the Waiquan. Theme Pham showed great concern for his subordinates. When the others returned from their leave, he also sent regards to their families. Van Q was now reassured about her brother's condition. If everyone was fine, then it was good. Except for Bok Kai, everyone was present. So, he decided to share our next action plan. The protagonist divided the team into 2 groups. Nat Kiem, first sword, and Tam Kiem, 3 swords. Tiger's roar will establish an information network with the various sections, including those subordinates retrieved from the Devil Sect. While 2 people might be sufficient for this task, it was still necessary to have 1 more person to accompany and protect Lord Van Q. Van Q recognized that the person accompanying her was none other than herself. She will take care of matters concerning the Sima sect. As for the remaining task, she assigned it to the other 2 individuals. Then the protagonist set out for the residence of the 9th Elder in the eastern part of the Heavenly Demon Sect, which was grand and magnificent, comparable to the 6 great sects. He wondered if he could easily acquire more precious treasures here. With the assurance of his companions, he felt somewhat reassured. Seeing the young master return, his subordinates joyfully rushed out to greet him. He gently reminded them to inform the patriarch of the elder's arrival, creating a dignified atmosphere. It felt like this time the sect leader would easily achieve what he desired. Hearing the news, Elder Ngayat hurriedly came out to express gratitude for the warm reception. Since they had arrived and the feast was still ongoing, they decided to enjoy it until evening. Indeed, such hospitality seemed somewhat different from other sections, but the protagonist understood it. Inside, a sumptuous banquet was laid out, surpassing the times when their sect leader was presented. He was greatly impressed by the elder's martial arts prowess displayed in the battle with White Elder. Ignoring the empty compliments, he focused on the main issue. If the elder could assist them, they would do their utmost to ensure respect. With that, he stood up to formally request to join their faction to help him become a candidate for the position of junior sect leader. Why be so modest? All right then, no need for further formalities. Sit down, Elder Ngayat gestured, signaling to his servant to understand his intentions. She immediately left, and soon a beautiful maiden entered, gracefully approaching with an alluring fragrance trailing behind her. It turned out she was the elder's daughter. The protagonist greeted her respectfully, realizing she was his sworn sister. He was willing to join their faction, but he needed something to establish trust. However, he still didn't understand Elder Ngayat's intentions. It seemed the elder wanted to establish a marital alliance to strengthen their relationship. Hearing this, Van Q was overwhelmed. She felt conflicted about the significance of this proposal. It was time for the protagonist to respond to the elder's abrupt request. Could it be that the elder disapproved of his daughter's appearance? Or was there something special about the elder's intentions? The protagonist realized the warm reception was a sign that Elder Ngayat wanted his bloodline. He understood that over the past 5 years, he had surpassed the 6 great sects but still needed to be cautious. Elder Tuma wanted to make his sect a force to reckon with against the 6 great sects. Van Q worries that she might lose the protagonist to Elder Ngayat's daughter. However, she reasoned that if they became allies, it would be advantageous. She began to argue against the conditions set by the patriarchal, realizing their validity. Despite her sadness, she accepts the reality that the protagonist might marry another. She regretted not realizing her feelings sooner. She felt inferior to the elder's daughter, who seemed more suitable for the protagonist. She felt her heart ache at the thought of him being betrothed to someone else. He must surely agree, but who would have thought? If he says yes, he might be seen as ambitious. If he says no, he might miss an opportunity for a strategic marriage for future prospects. Should I be firm or not? In reality, the protagonist wasn't afraid of the 6 great sects. If he dislikes me, then I'll be the one at a loss. Elder Ngayat might start cutting off ties with the sect leader. May I speak a few words? Since your victory over White Elder, I've admired and paid attention to you. Today's feast is prepared because we believe you are suitable for the position of junior sect leader, whether or not there's a marriage alliance. This statement must have helped my father greatly. Surely, he would agree with his son's viewpoint. In that case, the 9th Elder is also aligned with me. Thank you for your honorable reception. Van Q felt a mix of sunshine and worry. What if he rejects? Will there be any uncertainties in the future? Seeing that it was not appropriate to linger, the protagonist took his leave. He obliged his subordinates to return quickly. The 9th Elder hurriedly followed, questioning why he was leaving so suddenly. Could it be about the marriage? While I could follow his wishes, do I understand why I want to become the junior sect leader? Isn't it because the dominance of the 6 great sects needs to be rectified, and the sect restored to its original state? Why would he use a title to establish a close relationship with me and do things the 6 great sects have done? I don't need those ties. Seeing Elder Ngayat's expression, I realized he was impressed. Although young, the protagonist's talents were indeed exceptional. Thank you for the kind gesture, but your intentions do not align with mine. As for marriage, I wish to marry the one I love. There's nothing more to it. There's nothing more to say. I ask for your permission to leave. Guyet hastily apologized for his oversight and asked for forgiveness from the protagonist for not understanding his thoughts. He confessed with the ninth elder to forgive him, expressed his loyalty and willingness to accept the protagonist as his subordinate. Indeed, the sect leader seemed to soften up easily. With that, he successfully obtained the precious gem from the elder. This was enough qualification for him to become the junior sect leader of the heavenly demon sect. As he watched the silhouette of Thien Pham departing, Guyet couldn't help but wonder about the thoughts of this young man barely in his 20s. Dominant and pledging loyalty, how hopeful it was that he chose him. But could it be that he had chosen wrongly? Son, don't worry too much. Just snatch the flowers from the pot if needed. Guyet consoled him. I believe in you. Guyet felt relieved. He will endeavor to influence Thien Pham in the future. As they all left, dusk was set in. Van Q was still confused. She was clear about her feelings for Thien Pham, continuously observing his demeanor with joy. However, her thoughts kept returning to the words about marriage. Were they directed at her, or had she misunderstood? It seemed the protagonist also modified her way. Indeed, this mutual affection had been realized by Thien Pham himself. Meanwhile, at the Tuma sect, he had become a nameless guest outside the city. Unexpectedly, they had met the temple master previously. Surprisingly, he managed to persuade Elder Yan to take action. Yan was also proactive in this matter. Do you know who passed the 6th assessment 70 years ago? Before answering, could you explain the reason for this question? The deputy master was the most knowledgeable, so he explained. After a while, Ho Min understood everything. The nameless individual had learned the heavenly demon swordsmanship, containing the principles of the sect's founder. This seemed suspicious to Thien Pham. He was surprised by Ho Min's response, as the Grand Master was considered as a genius among the generations of sect leaders for the past 500 years. He had expanded the territory of the heavenly demon sect to Triad Jiang. However, 20 years ago, he disappeared without a trace. So who was this nameless person? Neither the protagonist nor the vice master understood the significance of this incident related to the temple master. The disciples of the heavenly demon sect proclaimed loudly as Ho Min rushed out to look. The protagonist understood it was too early to meet the temple master. Indeed, his father had returned after his conquest. Everyone was gathered to welcome him, chanting the sect's praises. Finally, the real battle was about to begin. Trang Guillaume received praise from the people, but the protagonist didn't feel a familial connection with him. Although he was a martial arts master, he seemed detached. Perhaps he had been injured during the expedition to Trumgoyen. Moreover, the other elders were also injured. The 5th elder had lost his left hand, and some others were absent. Van Q couldn't see her grandfather among them. She anxiously searched through the crowd, but luckily, the sect leader of the Dragon Demon sect appeared unscathed. He seemed a bit distracted, but it was nothing serious. The only one who didn't return was the 7th elder of the Sword Demon sect. The 1st elder appeared a bit confused when he didn't see his sister and his sect's representatives. Although he didn't know the reason, he had a bad feeling about it. Some people were surprised to see several more representatives from the Union of Martial Arts compared to the last time. Some were in awe of the numerous martial arts masters from Trumgoyen. The demeanor of the heavenly demon sect was too intimidating. Thien Pham still didn't understand the significance of their presence. The 1st elder had also returned from somewhere, indicating something interesting was about to happen. The protagonist immediately asked to know more, as his sources were blocked. It was very likely that their section would join hands with the Union of Martial Arts. What did he mean by that? A little later at the main hall of the Heavenly Demon Sect, the elders and several prominent sects arrived immediately to welcome the sect leader. The guards announced the arrival of each elder in a loud voice, most of them having arrived early. It is advised to engage in some small talk with the elders before the Trin ordeal, although it becomes incomprehensible when the presence of the leader of the Dark Devil sect is absent, followed by the signal of the presence of the 11 and 12 elders. Hang Tenhu, noticing the tension, must have made the others uncomfortable, so they deliberately arrived late. Ta Kim Q, the 4th elder of the Fuck Devil sect, turned towards the door, beginning to speculate about Pham with the title of the 12th elder, who was already directly in the grand hall, and the rest became surprised. They all clamored in chaos, wondering why there was such disorder at home. The lower elders, including Thien Pham, the newly elected 12 elders, wondered if he had already passed the 6th test. The first elder understood the reason why the Dark Devil sect was absent. Most of the higher-ranking elders emanated internal force to deliberately pressure them, making them quite uncomfortable. They remembered how Thien Pham had previously mistreated the descendants in the house. It was just the child of a lowly concubine. It will take a long time for them to acknowledge him. They wondered how he reached this level. How could anyone admit it? When the late father of Womcat saw his son's master, he greeted the leaders of the sects one by one, and they all bowed to Thien Pham. Most of them were fathers of the 6 swords. Seeing this scene, the elders couldn't bear it. Why would they dare to turn their backs on them? Thien Pham understood their actions. They were all due to the excellent support of his subordinates. The 5th elder now realized that there might have been some change during his absence. A shrimp could easily handle it any time and turn dangerous like this. They were angry. Their eyes glared towards him. Finally, the guardians outside had to announce loudly that all the patriarchs of the celestial demon sects had arrived, and the heavenly decree was proclaimed. After observing the room for a while to see if anyone was missing, the leader sat on his throne. All the subordinates shouted in unison, "Heavenly decree of the celestial demon sect! Heaven decree! Heaven decree! Let the humble people of the celestial demon sect pay their respects to the sect master." This basic procedure was completed, and as he sat down, Thien Pham noticed a change in his father. Why would the sect master have breathing issues? Perhaps he got injured during the Trin ordeal, but his complexion seemed healthy, so his injuries were probably not as severe as the other elders. Huofap was stunned to see his adoptive son, whose eyes were round with disbelief. Even his aura was controlled so well. Surely, he had transcended his level. Now, he couldn't be called a disciple anymore. The protagonist was a bit confused because it was his first time meeting his father in such a master-servant manner, and the imposing aura of the sect master made him feel overwhelmed. Perhaps even the heavenly decree couldn't believe it when they saw the child they raised now grown up like this. The meeting began, with the 9th elder reporting the main news during the master's absence. The first matter was the situation of the Dark Devil and Mystery Devil sects after the chaotic battle overnight, where both sides suffered heavy losses, with no survivors. Many high-ranking sects and those not present at the sect were disgusted. Teen Han and Dat Truck were killed, disappointing the elders. The faces of Duong Kang and Huofap were full of pain. The death of Vu Chenguyen was even more indescribable because he lost several close relatives and trusted aides. How could they accept such illogical reasons? Furthermore, Vu Yen killed Bok Chet. The evidence on the body points to the original cause and clear result. Even the sect master was surprised. He couldn't believe that his eldest daughter, with her insidious and venomous nature, could die so easily. Taho Fap looked at the assembly hall as if it were a celebration, secretly delighted. If this were the case, then Thien Pham's role as the sect master would be even more significant. Now that the group of elders couldn't interact with each other as before, Tama Nguyet announced that the protagonist had passed the 6th test and was appointed as the 12th elder. This was met with strong opposition from Tanu, but the sect master directly addressed Thien Pham, asking his son to step forward as the 23rd generation sect master. Thien Pham was appointed as the 12th elder. He expressed his gratitude and openly stated his intention to become the junior sect master.